throughout this song also be you and God, yes, but I hope that as you're looking at you and God, you do not forget about who is standing right next to you. Because that's the call. We love because he first loved us. So let's just take some space before we sing this song to get our hearts set on this. Something isn't adding up. This wild exchange you offer us. I gave my worst, you gave your blood. Seems hard to believe. You're telling me you chose the cross. You're telling me I'm worth that much. Well, if that's the measure of your love, how else would I sing? But completely, deeply, sold out, sincerely abandoned. I'm completely, freely, hands to the ceiling, enamored. My one life, my one life endeavor to match your surrender, to mirror not my will but yours. Oh, I'm completely, deeply, don't care who sees me abandoned. Oh, I surrender all. Oh, yes, I do. No, I just can't get over it. What kind of self-control is this? You had angels at your fingertips, but on the cross you remain. And I can't repay that kind of love, but I can praise with everything I got. Since death had all his power robbed, and then just like the grave, I'm completely, deeply, sold out, sincerely abandoned. Yes, I am. I'm completely, freely, hands to the ceiling, enamored. I'm one life endeavor to match your surrender, to mirror not my will but yours. I'm completely, deeply, don't care who sees me abandoned. Oh, I surrender all. I surrender all. The whole of my heart, the best of my soul, each phase of my life, each breath in my lungs, consider it yours, O Lord. Consider it yours, O Lord. The failures I hide, the victories I know, the battles I fight, each crown that I hold. Consider it yours. It's all yours. Consider it. It's all the glory forever. The grave that you won, the praise of the heavens, the kingdom to come. Consider it yours, O Lord. honestly, can we just repeat that? Oh, I surrender all. That thing you're holding on to, just hand it to God. Oh, I surrender. Every relationship that's not working out, we sing it out to Him. We offer it. Oh, even the good ones, even the good relationships, the things that we love, we surrender what we sing. Oh, our whole life, our whole mind, we sing it one more time to Him. Oh, God, you hear that. You hear our voices, but even more so, you hear our hearts in the room. You know what's underneath. That's why it doesn't matter who sees us, because we know what's at the root. But God, we do know that people will see us. So God, we ask that your Spirit help us, that when people see us, they see you. They see an image of a perfect Creator who loves them so much. And God, you know we're not perfect, but you are the perfecter of our faith. You make us whole. You make us worth something. But also, God, because we are your creation, we mean the world to you, and we thank you for the cross. But God, help us to know that love and make that love complete by loving your people. We surrender every breath, every word, every deed to you, and we pour it at your feet. We give you all the glory in Jesus' name. Amen. You guys can have a seat.
What's up, Ripple Effect? And really grateful to get to worship with you guys tonight. It was awesome. I don't know if you guys have realized this or not, but growing up in a world where like all of human knowledge is like at your fingertips is really, really stressful, right? Like where you can see like every bad thing that happens, whether it's really close or really far away, you can see it in like a matter of minutes or seconds sometimes, and it's a lot. Right? It's a lot. And not only is it a lot, but I think during a time where like we're always having our emotions played on, and where there's so many different voices from so many different directions, I think it's led to a time in our world, and a time for your generation and my generation too, where trust is at an all-time low. Like trust is at an all-time low. Think about it. Like many of you, well, whether you have social media or not, like we've grown up in a digital age, right? Where you have to be suspicious of like anything and everything that comes across your feed. Like you're warned about scams and catfishing and oversharing online and cyberbullying and like whatever, take your pick. And now we got AI, and right now it's really, really obvious it's AI. But there will be a time where it won't be. It's so obvious that it's AI, right? So like we're taught to question everything, to be suspicious of everything. And even if you're not on social media, or you're not on the internet a lot, or you're not chronically online like some of us, you still live in a world that's affected by this. Because of that culture, our trust ends up at an all-time low. And all of this mistrust that we have for like what we see on the internet or from the voices that we hear, it transfers into our day-to-day lives. It transfers into our day-to-day lives, even in spaces like this one, where like we're all showing up for one thing and we're supposed to be building this tight relationships. I think our suspicion is like so deeply ingrained with us that even in spaces like this one, it is really, really hard to trust, right? Like I bet a lot of you have experienced that it's hard to trust, it's hard to open up. It's like, can I say this? What will they think of? We're constantly having to curate what people think about us. And you take that mistrust and you take that constant curating and making sure we're putting on a good image. And we come into spaces like this one and we start talking about like loving our enemies. And I would imagine that comes with fear and uncertainty. Like, I can hardly love the people that I like, right? But that being said, if you're in the room and you're a Jesus follower, we have to figure out what to do with Matthew 5, with this statement that we read last week. It's from Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount. It's like his longest recorded teaching that we have, continuous teaching. And he says this in it. This is Matthew 5:43. He says, you've heard that it was said, you shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you so that you may be children of your Father in heaven. That's like a pretty big statement. Do this because this is how you will look like your Father in heaven. This is how you will represent God to the world. It's one of the few places where Jesus gives that idea, that qualifier. So what do we do with those words, Jesus followers in the room? Like, what do we do with that command that seems really, really difficult? And not only that, but like in light of those words, how do we navigate conflict? Like, what do we do when someone hurts us? Or whenever someone does something that whenever we have fights and disagreements and debates, whenever people do something to hurt you or they do something that hurts somebody that you love, whenever you like feel that like, oh, in the pit of your stomach or your chest because you're angry because of something that's happened. Like, we're supposed to love our enemies. What do you do with that? Are you supposed to just like do nothing? Or are you supposed to just like keep your mouth shut and be angry in silence? Like, what about whenever you have conflict with your friends or with your family? What about with the people who aren't your enemies, right? What do you do in those moments? Because conflict, we said this last week, conflict is always going to be a part of our lives. It's always going to be a part of our lives. I think sometimes we get the idea in our head that like if you had the right friends or if you had the right significant other or if your family just loved you more, then like conflict would disappear. And I think we get that idea in our heads that we think conflict would disappear. But something that I think we learn as we move through life is that that's the opposite is true. That we will always have conflict. And not only that, but sometimes what we don't expect is that in order to have deep relationships, in order to have real relationships, we have to have conflict. We have to have conflict. It's not something that we want to disappear because whenever we do conflict well, it does not have to be a bad thing. It doesn't have to be a bad thing. As uncomfortable as conflict is, it's a vital part of building deep relationships, especially whenever it's healthy conflict. Why? Because healthy conflict reveals truth. Right? Like whenever you're in a relationship with someone and you're bringing your real self to the table, you're being honest about what you think or how you feel, and you're not just saying what other people want to hear. It's only a matter of time, no matter how close you are with someone, before you see some conflict, before you start to disagree on something. Not only that, but healthy conflict, it can build a foundation of trust. Can build a foundation of trust because healthy conflict, whenever you have conflict in your relationships and it's good and it's healthy and you disagree on something and you can both bring that to the table and realize, oh, we disagree on this and this person still loves me. This person still cares about me. This person is showing up for me. That builds trust like nothing else, that I can express how I feel. I can be honest about where I'm at and this person isn't going to abandon me. Number 3, healthy conflicts. It creates opportunities to grow. Like regardless of what conflict is about, it creates opportunities for us to learn and grow and for the other person to learn and grow when conflict is healthy. The problem is that for conflict to look like that, it's got to be healthy. And most of the time, we don't do that well, and I include myself in that. Most of the time, we lean towards unhealthy conflict, and unhealthy conflict does the opposite of all of that. Unhealthy conflict conceals truth. Right, it pushes us to like hide or deceive people or cover up something that we did. Unhealthy conflict creates distance. It says, oh, I can't be honest with this person. I can't tell them how I feel or what I think because they're not going to receive it well or they're going to blow up or whatever. It creates distance, and unhealthy conflict can be damaging. And I think every person in this room has experienced this, right? Whenever you get in a fight with someone or you have a conflict with someone, you end up feeling like wildly misunderstood by this person. You're like, they just don't get it. They just don't understand. And we try to express our feelings and we try, and they try to express theirs, but we just leave thinking we just are never going to see eye to eye. Like we're just not the same, and it can be damaging and it can be hurtful. So what makes conflict healthy? Well, healthy conflicts, this is really simple and massively oversimplified, but healthy conflicts, they always fight for the relationship, they don't fight against it. They always fight for the relationship. They don't fight against it. It always values the other person. The way that we said this last week, if you weren't here, was that the people we have conflict with, whether that's our enemies or people that we don't, our enemies, our family, our friends, they are all people who are loved by God and created in his image. All people who are loved by God and created in his image, and we kind of have to start there. Right, that this person has worth and value. That's where we have to start to find healthy conflict. But it still begs the question, what do we do whenever someone hurts us? Whether it's our friend, our enemy, whoever. And moreover, what about the thing that we've all experienced as the worst, when someone hurts you and you finally find it in yourself to forgive them, and then X amount of time passes and they do the exact same thing again? And they hurt you again. Like, what do you do in those moments? To help us grab onto this, I want to go back to 1 Samuel that we were reading in last week. And if you remember, 1 Samuel is kind of like a history book of a people group called Israel. So this isn't like the modern day state of Israel that we hear in the news. This is like a people group that are called out by God to be his representatives to the world. And this is a good chunk of their history is recorded in 1 Samuel, including these stories about a guy named Saul and a guy named David. And the quick version of the story that we read last week is that Saul was the current king of Israel. He was super powerful. And David, a kind of outsider shepherd guy who you would never expect to be a leader, did something pretty courageous, and all of a sudden people are praising David and looking at David and talking about how great David is, and Saul got really, really jealous. Even though he was the king and he had all the power and he had everything that you could have wanted, he got really, really jealous, and he decided that he had to kill David, and he decides to hunt David down, and while he's hunting David down, he goes into a cave to use the bathroom like you do in caves, you know, and what he doesn't realize is that in the back of the cave, David is like hiding out there with all his men. If you guys were here last week, maybe you remember this, and he could have killed him, but he doesn't. He decides not to. David could have killed Saul, the guy who's trying to hunt him down and kill him, but he decides not to. And after this, Saul gives this like grand apology. Because David points it out. He says, hey, I could have killed you, and I didn't, and that's the only reason why you're still alive, because I see you as being valuable and loved by God, so I didn't kill you. And Saul realizes in this moment, oh my gosh, what did I do? And he gives this grand apology. This is from 1 Samuel 24. We're going to be reading in chapter 26 if you want to go there. But this is whenever he apologizes after trying to kill him in 1 Samuel 24. Saul says to David, you are more righteous than I. For you have repaid me good, whereas I have repaid you evil. I did something evil to you, you did something good to me back. Today, you have explained how you have dealt well with me, in that you did not kill me when the Lord put me into your hands. For who has ever found an enemy and sent the enemy safely away? Like, who does that? I was trying to kill you, and you didn't kill me. Like, who does that? Nobody does that. So may the Lord reward you with good for what you have done to me this day. And that's just a chunk of his apology, but he gives this like big grand apology. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. So no doubt David has been hurt. Like if someone gets together an army of 3,000 people and is trying to hunt you down and kill you, fairly hurtful, right? It's a fairly hurtful conflict to have with someone. And that's what Saul does to David. And David kind of takes the higher road. And you could imagine that David is probably hurt. He's probably questioning his actions, right? And Saul literally just says he apologizes. He literally says he's sorry. He gives this like big apology, and then a little bit of time passes. You know what happens is Saul's not so sorry anymore, right? He starts thinking, and his feelings start to well up again, and his jealousy starts to well up again, and all of a sudden, he's not so sorry anymore. Not only that, not only is he not sorry, but he decides he's going to do literally the exact same thing he did last time. That he's going to get together a gang of 3,000 people and go find David and kill him. This is 1 Samuel 26. So Saul rose and he went down to the wilderness of Ziph with 3,000 chosen men of Israel to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. Does the exact same thing. Except for in 24, it says it's fit young men. These are just regular men. The fit young men are gone. These are just regular men. And he goes to kill David all over again. After all of that apologizing and all that grandstanding, he decides to do the same thing. But this time, the way that David responds is a little bit different. This time, David hears that Saul is coming, and this is what he does, 26:4. David sent out spies and learned that Saul had indeed arrived. And then David sent out and came to the place where Saul had encamped, and David saw the place where Saul lay with Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army. Saul was lying within the encampment while the army was encamped around him. So think about this moment. David's hurt, and he finds it in himself to not kill Saul whenever he definitely could have. And Saul says he's sorry, and then here we are again, Saul doing the exact same thing. And he sneaks up and he finds Saul's entire camp, and he's got his men with him. And you can imagine what you should do in that moment, what you would do. And then time passes, and he sends out spies and he finds Saul. And I think what's interesting about this moment is that David responds differently, right? Like the first time he was just hiding out in a cave. This time he actually sends out spies. He goes out and he finds Saul's camp. So how is David able to do that? I think it's because this time he knows how Saul operates, right? Like he knows why Saul is showing up with 3,000 men. And I think the reason why he's able to do that is because he's kind of taken note of what Saul is like. He's seen where their conflict is. He's seen where the camp is. And because of that, because he's taken note, because he's paid attention, because he's seen Saul, he's better able to navigate the conflict this time. Because, like fool me once, right? And then he does, thank you. And then he does this. He takes the spies, and this is a great practice I think we can learn from David before we move on. That David gets curious. He gets curious about the person that he's in conflict with. And I think when we have conflict with anyone, this is a really, really important practice to get curious about that person and about ourselves. Like if someone hurts you, we have to ask why. Like, what about that hurt? Why did they do that? Why did I do this? And as we process how we feel about something, it's important to get curious about yourself and about the other person. I'll give you an example, a practical example from my wife. She's in here. I didn't tell her I was going to talk about this, but, here we are. My wife and I, early in our marriage, we used to have, and we still have conflict, plenty, but early in our marriage, we're really different humans. And if you've met us, you know that I'm like, I tend to be pretty like, pie in the sky, not paying attention. I lose track of time a lot. I get sucked into activities, and I'm frequently late to things. And Sarah, my wife, she's the opposite. She is usually on time. She's like a punctual, organized person. I am a scattered, disorganized person. And really early on in our marriage, we used to fight about this all the time. We used to fight about showing up to things on time because I'm super ADHD and I lose track, and 2 hours pass, I had no idea, right? And we used to get into fights about this all the time. And early in our marriage, it was like a constant wrestle of her wanting to be on time and being stressed out whenever we weren't, and me being like, oh, it's not that big a deal. I didn't even realize what time it is, right? And slowly over time, we started to pay attention to the conflict, right? Like, oh, we always fight about this. Like, this is always a thing that comes up. So we decided to get curious about one another. That's why I actually learned that from her, to get curious about one another. And what we learned is that the other person didn't want the worst thing for him. It was just a misunderstanding. So what we learned is that I can receive her reminders and receive her, hey, we got to be on time, and receive her, hey, did you notice what time it is? And she can offer me grace whenever I mess up or whenever I'm not paying attention. Getting curious and now we almost never fight about it. Still sometimes, but rarely. Getting curious about the other person whenever you're having conflict, it can be a great game changer. And it is for David, right? David gets curious. He sees the pattern. And this time, I lost my spot. And this time, he goes and he finds Saul at the camp. And next, he goes into the camp. And what happens next is kind of gold. So this is verse 7. So David and Abishai, they went into the army by night. This is where Saul is like sleeping. And Saul lay sleeping within the encampment with his spear stuck in the ground at his head. And Abner and the army lay around him. And Abishai said to David, God has given your enemy into your hand today. Now therefore, let me pin him to the ground with one stroke of the spear. I will not strike him twice. So he's saying, hey, this is your moment. This is the exact same thing, right? Last time it was in the cave. This time they literally sneak into the middle of the army. And Saul is sitting there sleeping, and the spear, which by the way, this is the same spear most likely that Saul had tried to kill him with like 10 chapters earlier. Like he literally hurls the spear at David, tries to kill him, and he misses. And now that spear, I'm guessing it's the same spear, maybe not, but it's jammed into the ground right next to Saul's head. So you could imagine what you're supposed to do in this moment. David's friend is like, hey, God has given you this opportunity today. Let me kill him. And you would think, after Saul hurt him again and tried to kill him again, that David would have like every right to pick up the spear and kill him. That's what David's friend is trying to say. But watch what David does. He says, the Lord forbid that I should raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. But now take the spear that is at his head and the water jar and let us go. So he says the exact same thing he did last time. I see Saul as someone valued by God and loved by God, so I'm not going to kill him. That's not what I'm going to do. Instead, grab the spear, grab his water jar, and let's get out of here. So that's what he does. They sneak out of the camp. No one notices, and no one ever realizes what happens. But David reclaims the spear that was used to hurt him, right? Like David reclaims the weapon that was going to be used against him, and he brings it with us. And I think that is a really interesting picture, because whenever we pay attention to our conflict, we should take notice of how people hurt us and how we felt. Like, what did they use to hurt us? I think oftentimes when we get really, really hurt in conflict, it's because they hit on a weakness of ours, right? That it's like our pride or our selfishness or our mistakes or an insecurity that we have. Like, whenever conflict hits at those things, it is so much more hurtful. And our typical approach when we have conflict, someone says something about your insecurity, or they point out a weakness of yours. Like, our typical approach is to either act like we don't care and it's no big deal and it didn't actually hurt, or act like those weaknesses or insecurities aren't really there at all. And I love what the New Testament author Paul says about our weaknesses. He's talking about like this unnamed weakness that he begged God to take away time and time and time again. And look at what Paul learned in the midst of this weekend. He said, concerning this, pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it would leave me, that this weakness would leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is perfected in weakness. Therefore, I will most gladly boast all the more about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may reside in me. So I take pleasure in weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and in difficulties for the sake of Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong. In the hands of your enemy, or in the hands of someone you're having conflict with, your insecurities, your weaknesses, your struggles, they can be an incredibly effective weapon against you. But whenever we bring those to God and we put them in the hand of God, all of a sudden they become our greatest strengths. The places where we lean on Him and have no choice but to trust Him are the places where God's grace is most visible. So whenever you have your weaknesses and your insecurities and the things that are often used to hurt you, whenever we take that weapon back and we offer it to God, it changes everything. And David actually uses this weapon. He takes the spear with him, and then in 1 Samuel 26, what we see is this. Then David went over to the other side, and he stood on top of a hill far away with a great distance between them. So he sneaks out of this camp, he takes the spear with him, he goes to a safe distance, and he holds up the spear, and the next thing you know, he calls Saul out. And he basically says the same thing he said last time. Look, I could have killed you. This was the spear that was right next to your head whenever you were sleeping, and I didn't kill you, and I could have. And all of a sudden, again, Saul knows that he should be dead. He knows that David spared him again. And when he realizes that David didn't kill him, it gives Saul a very, very, very clear picture of where David gets his security from, of who David looks to for his safety and his security. So much so that David actually ends up giving the spear back to Saul. David answered, here's the king's spear. This is verse 22. Have one of the young men come over and get it, and the Lord will repay every man for his righteousness and his loyalty. I wasn't willing to lift my hand against the Lord's anointed, against Saul, even though the Lord handed you over to me today. Just as I considered your life valuable today, so may the Lord consider my life valuable and rescue me from all trouble. David looks to God for his security. right? He looks to God to be the one that gives him his worth and value. He doesn't have to grasp it from Saul. And because he doesn't have to grasp it from Saul, he doesn't have to use like the weapons of the world in the way that Saul uses them. He doesn't have to do that because he doesn't get his worth from his enemy. He doesn't get his worth from Saul or his value from Saul or for his security from what Saul says or does or thinks or how many times he hurts him or how many times he apologizes and goes back on it. That only comes from God. The worth and the value that David is looking for only comes from God. And knowing that, David doesn't have to stoop down to the same level as Saul. He doesn't have to play the same a game that Saul is playing with him because David has his eyes on the God of eternity. He doesn't have to grasp it right now. He doesn't have to win the fight because that's where David puts his hope and his security into the hands of God. And when he does it, he is so much better able to navigate this conflict. And the same is true for us. When we have conflict, when someone hurts you, healthy conflict, it starts with finding your security in God. And finding your safety in God, because when you do that and other people hurt you, you don't have to fight back like the world fights back. You're free to love your enemies whenever they don't love you back. You're free to enter into conflict, wanting what is best for the other person, rather than trying to make sure you get your tit for tat revenge, right? So when someone hurts us, and I'll wrap up with this. When someone hurts us, there are a few different things that we can do that I want us to walk away with tonight. Number one, the thing that David does, he creates safety whenever he needs to. Like David doesn't like wake up Saul in the middle of the army and say, hey, I got your spear, right? No, like he takes the weapon with him and he goes outside of the camp and he creates distance. He creates distance. He goes somewhere safe, and that's when he enters into the conflict. And the same is true for us. When someone hurts you, you have to make sure you're safe to enter into that conflict. You have to make sure you're not in a space where you're still being hurt or taken advantage of or whatever it may be. Sometimes we have to create distance just like David did, right? And that might mean like discussing the situation with someone that you trust before you enter into it. It might mean that you create space through time. Right? That you're not ready to talk about it yet or enter into it yet. It might mean that you don't see this person for a little bit while you have time and space to think about it and process, but there's nothing wrong with creating safety. And please know, I feel like it's important to say this, that there's a difference between conflict and abuse. There's a difference between conflict and abuse. Conflict fights for the relationship. It says, hey, let's figure this out together. Abuse takes away agency. Like it takes away your rights over yourself. And it says, I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure you know that I'm right or that I'm on top. Abuse means that you don't get a voice or get a say. And it can happen in unhealthy relationships that we have. It can happen in school or church or the spaces that we're in. It can happen in relationships between significant others. And I just feel like it's important to say that abuse is so much different than conflict. And if someone is like pressuring you into doing something that you don't want to do, or someone is repeatedly hurting you in a way that you voice that it bothers you, right? That's abuse. If someone is someone who has like authority over you in a space like church or school or whatever, and they use that power or that authority to control you or to get what they want, like that's not conflict, that is abuse. And I think sometimes whenever we think about loving our enemies, we think that loving our enemies just means we let them do whatever they want and it shouldn't bother us and X, Y, and Z, and we just let people continue to hurt us. But instead, loving your enemy, if you're in a situation where you're being hurt or taken advantage of, sometimes loving your enemy means stepping up and asking for help from someone that you trust. It means letting other people in on the situation. It doesn't mean letting people continue to hurt you. So if that's you, like I just want you to know that there is space if you feel safe for you to ask for help here tonight. And that's with your small group leader. It could be with one of our staff members. But the point is, that we should always start with creating safety. Number two is this, become curious. I said this earlier, but if you want to navigate conflict well, we have to dig beneath the surface of ourselves and the other person. We have to learn to look for the patterns of conflict, like where do you always end up upset, or where are you always getting hurt, or how does this person always continue to hurt you? Like, do you always have conflict over feeling left out? Why is that? Do you always have conflict because people take your words or actions the wrong way? Why is that? It's worth asking. Do you always have conflict between the different friend groups that you're a part of because you're playing chameleon over here or over there? Like, why is that? Look for the patterns and get curious about why you're having conflict. Number 3, actively pursue reconciliation. Reconciliation means healing a relationship. And I think it is so much easier in our life to have conflict with someone and just to cut it off and leave. Like, I'm never talking to this person again. I'm not even going to make eye contact with them in the hallway, right? And we just draw a wall in front of us. But as a Jesus follower, we don't get the luxury of just cutting people off. We don't get the luxury of just saying goodbye. Like, if you have relationships in your life right now where you've been, where you've cut people off and you're struggling and you're in tension, like, I would say you should actively be pursuing reconciliation in that situation if you could do so safely. So actively pursue reconciliation. David goes to find Saul, right? Do the same thing in the conflicts that you have. And the last one, look to God for your security. If you are always in need of someone else's affirmation or someone else offering you worth and value, then you are never going to find peace, and you will constantly have conflict because you'll constantly need affirmation from somebody else. So look to God for your security. Only God can offer you the security and the safety and the worth and the value that we were created to have, not other people. So conflict is a healthy, good part of a life of a Jesus follower. And we just have to learn what it looks like to enter into it healthy together. Pray with me real quick. God, thank you for being a God that shows us how to love our enemies and shows us how to enter into conflict well, God. And that you don't want us to just like sweep things under the rug and act like everything's fine, but God, instead, you create space for us to feel, to be angry, to be sad, to be hurt, and you create ways for us to keep each other accountable and to have hard conversations and to step up so that whether it's our enemy or our friends or whoever it may be, God, that we can love each other well. And I pray that you give us the courage to do that, the bravery to do that, the energy to do that. I pray that you give us the eyes to see the places where we've been hurt and the patterns that we have in our life, and you'd help us enter into those spaces well. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, we'll see you guys in here after small groups. They'll be over at 8, and we're doing community group wars right in here at 8 o'clock. See you then.